thank you all to the entire DemCast world. You all, it's fantastic. I can't tell you how grateful I am for each and every one of you and the support that you gave me in my run for the U.S. Senate. It was an amazing ride, and I am so fortunate and blessed to have done it. I wish the outcome was a little differently, but folks, we gave Lindsey Graham hell for over 2 years. I was joking with a reporter the other day, and I told him, I said, did you check on the stock of Fruit of the Looms during my race last year? And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, we had Lindsey Graham changing his underwear more often than anybody I've ever known in history. And I'm sure their stock must have gone up. And that's all because of all of you all. He was as nervous as I don't know what each and every day. But you know what? My grandma told me after the election, she said, Jamie, when one door closes, another door opens. And that's what happened. And I can tell you, when I got the call from President Biden and his team to become the chair of the DNC, I was deeply honored, and I was excited. And I can tell you, since January 21, when I accepted the keys to the DNC, I wake up excited each and every day to do my job, to make this a bigger and a better party, because we are right now the wall that separates the least of these in our society from chaos. And so yeah, I'm very fortunate to be with you all tonight working on that. And listen, and I have a few remarks, and then I'm sure we got plenty of questions that you all may have. I want to first kick things off by talking a little bit about the For the People Act that the House Democrats just recently passed, and also the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and our continued fight for voting rights. 56 years after Bloody Sunday and the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, folks, we are still fighting to defend the legacy of my good friend, the late, great John Lewis, and everyone who, with him, worked to fight to pass this crucial legislation. The gutting of the Voting Rights Act in 2013 opened the floodgates for Republicans to pass suppressive voting laws. And they went to work immediately. It was like Pandora's box opened and all of the evil spirits came out too. And they are cloaking their true motives under the guise of voter fraud, and we need voter integrity. Integrity is about honesty. And the only thing that they're honest about is the fact that they need to cheat in order to win. So nobody should be surprised by this. After a cycle of historic voter turnout in November, Republicans are scared. They don't win when people can make their voices heard at the ballot box. Just look at our victories in Georgia. In 3 months since Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock were elected, Georgia Republicans passed and the governor signed Senate Bill 202, which makes it harder for people, especially people of color, to vote. And across the country, the Republican voter suppression machine is just in overdrive. This year alone, we've seen them introduce over 360 pieces of anti-voter legislation across 47 states. But my friends, Democrats are fighting back. We're not going to sit back and just take this. We have seen this movie before, and we don't want to go back. We don't want to watch it again, and we won't watch it again. Our House Democratic majority, they passed the For the People Act. And this is the most significant voting rights and democracy reform since Voting Rights Act passed more than a half century ago. Hopefully soon we'll take up the John Lewis voting advancement legislation. And I hope that we can get the votes to get these bills out of the United States Senate and to the desk of President Joe Biden. Because, my friends, the right to vote is sacred, and we must protect it for every American, no matter their race or their background. So, I couldn't be more excited to be here with y'all tonight to keep up the good fight and to continue to do the good work that you all have done in cycles past and what I know you'll do in the cycle coming up.
Yeah, I spot on, Jamie. Our the GOP is in overdrive trying to make sure that people can't vote. You know, it's this batch of laws that they're trying to pass. It's not a reaction to voter fraud. They just talk about it being a reaction to voter fraud. It's a reaction to voter turnout. Like you're saying, they're scared. So I guess the question is, what do Democrats' chances look like moving forward if we don't defeat these bills and if we don't pass the FTPA? Like what keeps you up at night?
Well, Nick, we have to. And let me tell you why this is so personal to me, because this is, my job before I became party chair and all. I worked on the floor of the House of Representatives. My job was the floor director in the Majority Whip's office. So it was on me to get 218 votes every time we got on the floor to pass legislation on the House floor. So I've passed a lot of bills in my day. But this is so personal to me. One of the last things, many of you know that I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather had a 4th grade education. My grandmother had an 8th grade education. Well, after I turned 18, one of the things that became a tradition between me and my grandfather was that we would go and vote together. And so one of the last things I did with my grandfather was vote in the 2004 race. And he passed away. So we voted early part of November. He passed away November 18th. And so I took him to vote. He was in a wheelchair because he's a diabetic amputee. And we went to vote, came back home. We sat out on the porch and we just started talking. And he said, he called me Baldy because that's my nickname. He was the only person who called me that now. So folks, don't call me Baldy. That was just for my grandfather. But he said to me, he said, Baldy? I said, yes, sir. He said, in this state, I wasn't always considered a whole man. I said, yes, sir, I know. He said, Baldy? I said, yes, sir. He said, in this state, I couldn't always vote like we did today. I said, yes, sir, I know. And he looked at me and he grabbed my arm and he said, never let anybody tell you that you don't matter. Never let anybody tell you that you don't count. What these bills are doing, they're telling people in this country that they don't matter, that they don't count. I named my eldest son after my grandfather. His name was Willie, and William officially. And my son is named after him. When I went to cast my ballot for myself running for the U.S. Senate, I took my son with me. And many of you saw the pictures. And I sat and I thought about that. What these Republicans are trying to do is to have my sons live in the world that my grandfather lived in. That is not going to happen. Because every drop of blood that flows through my veins, every breath that goes through my lungs will be focused and dedicated to fighting back against these attempts to take away and to go back to a way that we aren't going back to. And so the DNC, the Democratic Party, and all of us in it have to be focused and dedicated and make this personal, because our voting right is the most sacred right we have as Americans. It is a foundational right in which all other rights are built upon. And when that is taken away, the whole house falls down. And so this has to be a personal fight to say to the Republican Party, this will not stand. We won't allow this, because people in this country, regardless of the color of your skin, should have the right to vote, unencumbered. And so that's what I'm going to fight on. And I hope everybody else is just as committed to fight along with me.
I think you're on the right call. This is a batch of people who have thrown up their hands and said, this ain't gonna fly. Lori, or Jamie, were you gonna hop in?
So is there anything that the DNC is doing publicly behind the scenes to help combat all of these laws?
Yes, so we are working in all of the states with our state Democratic parties on pushing back against this. Some of our organizing, we're organizing phone banks and all, calling into legislatures to push back. Mark Elias is our attorney as well. As we all know, Mark, who's doing fabulous work and pushing back against this. Sometimes the DNC will get involved. Last cycle, I think we spent almost $30 million fighting against voter suppression attempts in the courts. We fought against some efforts in Arizona before. Somebody just mentioned Arizona. And we're going to continue to do just that. The fight will go from the state houses to the courthouses to the houses of Congress. And eventually our hope is to get bill on the desk of the White House. And so, we are working, I talk with senators all the time to strategize about how the DNC can be helpful to them to get to the point where we can get this bill, this legislation, HR 1, S1, and HR 4 eventually when it gets passed out of the House, how we can get that to the president's desk. So there's a lot, I know folks are saying, well, what are the plans? And this, folks, understand this, that there's some things that we can disclose. There's certain things that we can't. It's just like the Super Bowl. You don't see the teams be like, oh, and here's our plan for how we're going to win the Super Bowl. That just doesn't happen. I know that everybody wants to be involved and understand it. Trust me. When I need all hands on deck and to give some marching orders about how we mobilize our activists, I will be the first person out there to let you all know that. But everything can't just be up on Twitter and on Facebook in terms of this is our detailed plan on what we're going to do, so that, because the Republicans, they troll me too. they watch all my stuff. I know Rona, Rona's not that good at her job, but nonetheless, she's good enough to understand if I put all of our plans out there. So nonetheless, we do have plans. We are executing on those plans. We will have a role for everybody to play in those plans as well, but all in due time.
Well, we are. Oh, I was just gonna say we are ready. We're ready to roll, and I think that's music to everybody's ears on this call, Jamie. It's hard to get much out of anybody, but it's good for obvious reasons. But it's great to hear that there's a plan. Jamie or Lori.
Yeah. So Jamie, since you've joined the DNC, I'm sure you've been thinking about what does the DNC look? How is it evolving, over the next year, 2 years, and into the future? Can you give us a little peek into that?
So, this is the thing. When I was asked to be the DNC chair, the thing that I told, the president's team is that I not only wanted to look at 2022 and 2024, but I wanted to look at what do we want the Democratic Party to look like in 2031, right? 10 years from now. And then let's work ourselves backwards. Part of what that means is rebuilding the infrastructure of our party. And what do I mean by that? Going back to Howard Dean's, he called it 50 state strategy, but 57 states and territory strategy, including our Democrats abroad. And so that means, that's not always the sexy, interesting thing for a lot of people, right? Infrastructure, right? But it's so necessary and it's so important. So right now, what we are doing is we're going to be working with all of our state parties on SWOT analysis, identifying their strengths and their weaknesses, coming up with the strategic plans with them. And then the DNC is going to look at, well, where are the holes and how can we help fill those holes in our state parties? Because we're only as good as our weakest link. And if we have state parties that can't do the things that they need to do and that they only uniquely can do, then we can't win races in those states. And I'm not going to leave anybody behind. I don't believe in ceding territory and whole swaths of the country just to the Republicans and say, well, you're a red area and you're a red state, so that means we can't compete. Now, there's some people who get online like, well, I don't know why we're spending money in Mississippi and South Carolina and Texas and all. It's because Democrats are there, right? So wherever Democrats are, we're going to compete in those states. Does that mean we win all races? No, it does not mean we win all the races. But let me tell you something about politics. It's like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. Many of the red areas used to be blue areas, and now they're red areas because the blue people left those areas and stopped investing in those areas and allowed the party infrastructure to dry up in those areas. That's why we're where we are. Republicans don't think in this mentality. You know, I got into an argument back and forth with somebody. It's like, think about Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont. What are they? They are some of the bluest states as it comes to presidential elections, right? But what do they have in common right now? They all have Republican governors. So if Republicans took this theory of the case of, well, it's a blue state, we can't compete in a blue state, so we won't compete in a blue state, then there would not be right now 3 Republican governors sitting their happy buns in the governor's mansions in those states. And so we have to compete everywhere. And that means recruiting candidates that are reflective of the people of the states that they're trying to run in, and supporting people with that. Now, that also means, folks, we got to understand this. That does not mean that all the time, all of the Democratic candidates are going to believe and behave in the same manner that we believe in. It doesn't work that way. To be a big tent party means that you got a lot of different people with a lot of different experiences and a lot of different backgrounds, and they're going to look at things sometimes a little differently. And that's okay too, as long as the common part, which is we believe that America should be America for all of America's people, right? That all of us should be able to live the American dream, that regardless of our background, our color, who we love, how we love, our identity, all of the various aspects that make us us, that we still have the same right to live our lives unencumbered. And that's really important. That's what makes us Democrats. And so I'm not ceding any territory or any ground. And if you want me to cede territory or ground, then I'm not the Democratic chair for you, because I'm going to fight in all of the areas that we have Democrats. And I believe that's who we are. Because if we took that mentality, we would not have transformed Georgia. We would not have transformed Arizona. There had to be some investment in those areas because they were ruby red. Virginia was ruby red. And now it is North Carolina blue, right? That took time and energy and investment. And so that's what it's going to take in some of these other areas, and we can't give up. I mean, look at Mississippi. Almost 40% of the registered voters in Mississippi are Black. Folks, think about that. Look at the states that are blue and the percentage of African-American voters. You know, if 40% Black, but the problem is there's still large swaths of unregistered voters in Mississippi, and we have not gone to the rural parts of those. We've seeded the rural parts of those states and only focused on the urban parts of them. We got to go everywhere. We got to show up. We got to talk to people, and we got to bring them in. And so that's what I really want to focus on as chair of the DNC.
Well, that's music to our ears, especially in Ruby Red, Tennessee.
Don't worry. My plan is as chair to visit every state in this great union of ours.
Fabulous. What was interesting, Jamie, did you see the article about how that having Democratic candidates in some of the red areas actually is what helped Biden get over the hump and win? That's
exactly right. It helped him win in Georgia and places like that. And it's because, and this is why I tell people, local candidates are so important. And you can't be dismissive of your local candidates because, and if folks don't believe this theory, take a look at Virginia a few years ago. Because they were able to run so many House races, and those candidates were good and energetic in those House races, they were able to help the top of the ticket, which frankly, we all know was not the most energetic top of the ticket that we've ever seen, to really get over the finish line. And so it's important. Let's recruit as many people as we can to run for office. Let's take as a goal not to leave any seat uncontested, right? Even if that just means we got somebody signing up. because just signing up gives Democrats and people in those communities an alternative to the status quo. And it can bring some energy. And if you cut the margins in a number of precincts just by 500, right? Instead of losing the precinct or losing the district 60-40, you lose it 50, 57, 43. That helps the top of the ticket tremendously. And so we have to really think much more strategically about getting people involved and all of the like.
Absolutely. DemCast, we've got lots of blue dots in DemCast. We're a lot of our fiercest advocates out there work really hard in local elections that most people would write off. So I know everybody's really happy to hear you say that. Do we have you for one more minute, or I want to honor your time here?
I think I got a little more time. Let me keep asking.
Okay, because
I have to drop off.
Okay, that sounds great. Because I do want to ask. So how can grassroots? I know we've got a lot of grassroots leaders on this call, organizational leaders, activists, social media influencers. How can we help your plan? How can we plug in?
Well, one of the first things I think is really important, let's shore up our state parties. And listen, folks, I know people say, oh, I don't know if I like all the people at my state party and this and that. Folks, this is not about liking, we're not asking you to date the people at the state party. We're not asking you to, have to eat dinner with them constantly. What we're saying is it's important. We see that when Democrats can all row in the same direction, i.e. Georgia, some magic can take place. You had the national party, you had the state party, you had the candidates, you had local grassroots organizations, all focused on getting Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock elected. And guess what happened? We got them over the finish line and they got elected. That was not asking people to marry each other or to go out with each other or to eat, dinner with each other. It was just about working to get the work done and getting people to the polls and protecting them once they got there. So one of the things that I'm asking all of you to do is get involved on the state level, even if it's forming your own little grassroots organization to help out in your own community. That helps. It helps. I'm going to be working with all of our state parties, and we got some tremendous state party leaders, and we got a lot of new state party leaders. And so I'm going to be working with each and every one of them much more closely over the course of the next few years to strengthen our outreach effort to folks. We know that some people don't want to be identified as Democrats. They align with Democratic values, but they are not, they're not ready yet to have that card in their pocket that says, yes, I'm a yellow dog Democrat or whatever. So we understand that, but we can have that partnership and that coalition as we work together to get more people who share our values elected, because we know what we get from the other side of the aisle. So the first step is, reach out to your state parties or your county parties, because that's really, really important. Reach out to some of the local groups and organizations, their Democratic clubs and all. That's important. Understand also, educate yourself on understanding how all of this party stuff operates. Sometimes I see that there are a lot of the frustration that some of our activists have is because they don't quite understand how to navigate the process. And that's one thing that I hope to improve at the DNC as well, is to put up some videos from time to time, just explaining the process. Because it can be confusing. They don't teach party operations in high school civics, right? And so that means that the only way you learn is either you go volunteer and you clumsily go through the path, or we as a party should do a better job of teaching people how the party operates and how folks can get involved and where they can fit in. And so I want to do a better job of doing that over the course of the next few weeks and months before we get to the 2022 race. But that's the first step, I would say. Reach out to your local folks. And then we hope to start organizing on the ground starting by the summer. One of the things I also want to do is a national voter registration initiative. partnering with other organizations. Voter registration is really, really important. And the DNC, hasn't done voter registration in nearly 2 decades because we've, C3s and C4s have primarily done that work. But I think the DNC has to get back into that game because it's just not enough. We need an all hands on deck approach to getting this done. And then I encourage folks, think about running for office. Think about running for office on a local level. There are a lot of great organizations out there. In addition to this, your state parties, your county parties, run for something. There's so many organizations that are working to try to recruit more people to run for office. And it's important that we get more people to do just that.
On that note, we had a question, and one of the questions in our Q&A from Bruce Workman, who I think must be in Ohio, was Sherrod Brown lost our county by 30 to 40 points. How do we get local Democrats to run in that environment?
Well, some of it is sacrifice, because it is a big sacrifice to run. I mean, I can tell you we had our second child while I was running for the U.S. Senate, right? And so that's hard, particularly if you're a young person, you got a young family, or if your income doesn't allow, your job doesn't allow, it is really, really difficult. And so I understand that. And, I often tell people, you can't go into it thinking, well, my county party or my state party is just going to write me a check to run for office, because party organizations don't have resources like that. The DNC can't just write every candidate a check. And even if they wrote every candidate a check, it'd be so small, it wouldn't really help to get much done, right? You're going to have to build an apparatus to do your own fundraising. And so the way that I approach it is I try to make sure that I have all of the candidates, people who are thinking about running for office, I give them the hardcore facts, and I want you to go in eyes wide open to understand what that means and the sacrifices that it means that you will have to take for your family. And even if if you do want to still move forward on it, then it's important that the party tries to support you in all of the efforts. If we can't write you a check, we can at least try to connect you with people who can, right? Or train you how to go about doing the fundraising. So, or connecting you with the technology and the type of operatives that are on the ground that can help you build up that campaign apparatus. So I know it's difficult in some of these red states and red areas, but for those of us who, folks who are retired or if you're stay at home and it's something that you're just interested in, I mean, try it, do it. See if you can make a difference, and who knows what will happen. But at the very least, you will probably help the top of your ticket in your state by running locally.
Yeah, we'll never move the needle if we don't try.
That's exactly right, Nick.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
So Jamie, I would love to keep you on here for the whole hour or 2 hours or whatever, but some folks from your office are pinging me and saying it might be time to wrap it up. So,
well, let me just say, if you guys don't mind me just giving people my clues,
not at all. Please do.
Well, first of all, thank you all for what you do. I remember when I first started hearing about DemCast and the activists on the ground, and I mean, you got some amazing people. We had some amazing people here in South Carolina who really, really did some amazing work for me, and I will be forever grateful to them. And for all of my friends that I made all across the country, thank you all. Thank you for believing in me, and thank you for having hope that we can change things and that we can build this new South, because I think the new South is coming. And the Republicans know it's coming. That's why they're fighting so damn hard to try to keep control of the power, because they see what we see, that things are changing, and then they're changing very quickly. And so, desperate people do desperate things, and that's what we see in the Republican Party. But folks, this is ultimately about hope. And some of you may have heard me tell this story, and I love to tell it because when my batteries get low, it's what keeps me running. So many of you know, as I mentioned earlier, I used to work in the House of Representatives. I worked in the Majority Whip's office for Jim Clyburn. There was one night in which I was working very, very late, whipping a few bills. And it was so late that the custodial staff actually showed up. And there was this middle-aged African-American woman who was vacuuming and she was wiping things down. And I noticed her, but then I went right back to work. And then finally I felt like somebody was looking at me. I looked up and there she was. And she smiled at me. And I said, "Ma'am, do you need to come in?" I said, "You're my boss. I'll leave. I'll go work out in the hallway." And she said, "Oh, no, son, you sit right there." I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "You know, I love your office. I come and clean your office every night. You have a beautiful office." I said, "Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate it." Now, mind you guys, my office is on the 3rd floor of the Capitol. I can look out my window straight down the mall to the Washington Monument. I'm on one wall I shared with John Lewis and the other wall I shared with John Kerry. And as I tell people, I will never have better real estate in my life. But I tell her, I said, "Oh, I'm so grateful." And she asked, "Are you from South Carolina?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And then she goes over to my pictures over on my wall and she picked up one and she said, "Oh, I love looking at your pictures. Is this a picture of your family?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's my family." She said, "Is this your mother in the picture?" I said, "Yes, that's my mom." "Is your mom's name Patricia?" "Yes, my mom's name is Patricia." "Patricia Harrison?" "Yes, Patricia Harrison's my mom." And she stopped in the middle of the room and she started shaking. She thought, "Oh my God, I know your mother. I went to high school with your mom. I remember when your mom became pregnant with you and had to stop school in order to have you." And tears started rolling down her face. And then I got all teary-eyed. And she came over and she hugged me and she said, "Oh my Lord, I would have never thought that Patricia Harrison's son would be right here. You give me hope." My friends, that's what the work we do is all about. It's about hope. Because for 4 years, people all around this country would wake up each and every day and they open their newspapers, they read their emails, they watch television and radio, and all they heard and saw was bigotry, hatred, and division. And those people gave up all sense of hope. But on November 3rd, I believe, in January, you all helped to give those people hope back again. Because when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were elected, and then when we won the race for John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, for the first time in a long time, those people got hope back. And so for that, I just want to say thank you. Here in South Carolina, our state motto is "While I breathe, I hope." But what I said all on my campaign trail is that I'm changing up the motto, and I'm going to change up that motto for my time as DNC chair. Because the way that we bring hope back is through another 4-letter word, and that's through our vote. So for the next 4 years, while I breathe, I vote, because that is how we bring hope back to this great nation. So thank you all for what you do. Thank you for being hope warriors. And thank you for fighting so hard for this party. And I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to fight equally hard for each and every one of you. So thank you for the support, everybody.
Well, thank you. On such a weighty day where we were all on pins and needles for a long time, we got a taste of hope, and
Yes.
you brought it home for us. So thank you, Jamie. We appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.
And everybody, please do stick around because we've got a couple more things we wanted to hit on. That was just awesome. Sorry.
And I know that there's a
that
lot
was
of
great.
questions about Manchin and Sedema in here. Just so everybody knows, the groups on the ground in those states are working really, really hard. And we do think that they will come around. So there is a ton of grassroots pressure on these guys right now, and they're going to keep it up because that's the way to get them, is to get the people behind them. So,
Yep.
Stay tuned. There's some big actions planned next month from the groups on the ground, and they like the national people to stay out of the business.
So without further ado, we've made them wait wait a long time here. We've got Brian Dawson, who many of you know from the Twitterverse and social media, who is going to come and help walk us through a way that you can take action right now in the moment. We're going to ask everybody to do so. So, Brian?
I am on mute. Sorry about that.
There.
I'm so psyched to be here with everybody.
And if you guys ever get the chance, let Brian's wife cook for you.
Yeah,
I'm still dreaming about tacos a year later.
So excited to be here. That was an amazing discussion. Two things really popped out at me. Number one, make it personal, right? So some of you may know I'm the son of immigrants. My mother was wounded fighting for freedom in Soviet-occupied Hungary. So this is very personal for me. There's nothing more important than the right to vote. I put a little trivia question in the chat as well. What is the right most mentioned in the Constitution? It's not the right to bear arms. It's not freedom of assembly. It's not freedom of religion. It's the right to vote. And it's the exact vote that Republicans are fighting so hard to prevent us from exercising. It is an absolute abomination. He also said we have to make our voices heard. And well, we have a chance right now to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully everyone can have their phones ready. We have a chance to write a personalized letter to our senators right from that phone. Please don't hang up. Please continue. Please write this letter. It's extremely important. We have over 3,000 already. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, can you allow me to share screen, Mr. Knudsen? Uh-oh.
You should be good.
Okay, share screen. There we go. Awesome. So what I would like everyone to do is take their phone out. Text HR1 to 40649. So it's a phone number, short code 40649. And the keyword is HR1. Your autocorrect might want to split HR and the 1, make sure it doesn't do that. So HR1 to 40649. You will get a link back on your phone. This is not shared with anyone. Thank you, everybody. Wow, really fast responses. Thank you so much. You'll get a link on your phone. When you click on that link, you will get the web form. Please feel free to personalize your message. The more personal it is, the more effective it is. Each of you will see a different message, but please personalize it. Thank you, Melissa, Lori, Kelly, Debriana, Heidi, Cynthia, Patty, Joanne. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jamie, Melissa. Keep it going. If you see on the right-hand side, either on DemCast or Brian Dawson USA, please feel free to share this campaign with your own social media networks. Get the word out. The better the geographic distribution, the better it is for our effectiveness. So please share this with family, share this with friends, share this on Facebook, share this on Instagram, share this on Twitter. HR1 to 40649. The Twitter link also has a URL. So if you want to share that URL via email to your friends and family and acquaintances, please do that as well. Keep it going. Thank you so much, Diane, Min, Sherry, Alan, Karen, Margaret, Melissa, Jamie. Keeps going. Wonderful. So now we're up to 3,020, 3,022. That's great. Wonderful. Wow. You guys are awesome. This is really what makes a difference. And something else Chairman Harrison mentioned is the need, not just for the party, but I also mentioned in the chat, it's a need for unity. We as Democrats also have to unify. Not all candidates are pure, right? But we have to move the needle. Progress can take time. So let's make sure we unify, we get together, we make our voices heard anytime we can. Silence is complicity. This is great. Thank you, PJ, Gerardo, Jody, Stephen, all of you for joining in. Please keep this going. We won't take up more time from the meeting, turn this back over to Nick, but this will continue. Your pins will show up. The link to the pins, by the way, is in the link on my Twitter account on Brian Dawson USA, the very first tweet you'll see. If you want to see your name, see your pin, go ahead and click on that link, and everyone who takes action will see their name drop. So thank you again, everyone. Great to see you. And this was a great meeting. Thanks for inviting me, Nick.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for all you do. And it is super cool to see the numbers just ticking up as people send their messages to their senators. It's democracy in action right there. So
Like, almost 100 messages just on this call alone.
yep,
There it is,
that's
3,100. Boom, and it keeps going.
amazing. All right. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So, and then Jamie and Laurie, was there one other thing that we wanted to do, or are we?
I was going to just mention about our fund that we launched today.
Oh yeah.
So we know that the justice for George Floyd was a win today, but there's still so much work to be done. And you know that part of our big mission at DemCast is to support the work that goes on at the grassroots level, at the state, just like what Jamie was talking about, is really building that collective power. And we saw that just come together so beautifully in Georgia. And and so we're working on funds that will help you connect with those grassroots groups on the ground in these states, and know that your money is going towards groups that are really doing the hard work to make a change for democracy and for justice. And so today we launched a Racial Justice for Minnesota Fund, and I will drop the link to that in the chat.
And donating to these organizations builds lasting power versus just a candidate who's in a cycle. And that's really the big impact, is building lasting power. Because if we fund them now, they'll be in a position, think what position they're going to be in 2024, 2026.
Exactly. And we know that in Minnesota, they don't have big races coming up next year. What they do have is all of their city mayoral races will come up next year.
This year.
This year.
Sorry, this year. And, you know, that is huge. That's where you get justice and policing, because it's the mayors that oversee the local police and sheriff's departments. Those are the people that have direct control over, you know, what kind of training happens and what kind of, you know, how they recruit people. So it's really
and their budgets.
And their budgets, right?
Police budget is done by city council and mayors.
So yeah, so that's our first one. In last cycle, in case you didn't know, we raised $500,000 for grassroots groups across the US, and to help fund and keep those people on the ground. So
we're going to keep it up. The one that came out today, we wanted to have, you know, for today, obviously, for Minnesota and for racial justice and social justice organizations there. We're also going to have about 5 or 6 more coming out in the next week or so for other states that are more sort of electorally focused. These are going to be the states where there are big Senate races, big gubernatorial races for 2022. And we want to make sure that we're trying to do what we did in Georgia, build that grassroots infrastructure, especially organizations that are BIPOC led and that reach out and try to engage underserved communities and communities of color. So we will be sharing those out with everybody once they're all ready. I actually posted the one for Wisconsin today, but we're also going to have Florida and Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, and probably in North Carolina too. So those are coming.
And then one final thing is DC statehood vote is Thursday. We're expecting it to happen between 12 and 3 Eastern time. And so we have just a little tool to tweet at your congressmen and senators to support DC statehood. It's different messaging depending on if they're a Democrat or a Republican. So literally that will just tweet to all of your 3 reps, both your senators and your congressmen. So
It's a public service for you. You don't even have to think about it. Just click the link.
Just like-
Magic tweet appears.
Yes, basically.
So,
Yeah, especially with what the Republicans were trying to say today. That, you know, it was power grab with the number of people they have. So it's like, so you want to take away state from Alaska, Wyoming, and Vermont then? Because
all right.
Well, thank you guys so
Yep.
much.
I think that's it. This was a fun call.
was
Brian,
Very
Brian,
good.
thank you so much. Everybody go have a glass of whatever your favorite beverage is and you know, have a little celebration. It's bittersweet, but it's a really important day. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.